Ethan Crowe learned silence long before he learned how to trust people. It lived in the desert the way heat lived in stone, patient, relentless, impossible to argue with. Out here, between low red hills and a sky that never seemed to end, silence was not peace. It was a decision. He stood beside the water trough, one hand steady on the barrel's spigot, watching the thin stream spill into the dust. The sound was small, almost fragile. Everything out here was water tortue, wood, men, bonicu. Ethan moved with the economy of someone who expected nothing from the world and offered it even less. His coat was sun-bleached and worn at the elbows. His hat sat low, shadowing eyes that rarely lifted unless there was a reason. For 3 years, there had been no reason. The ranch wasn't much. A fence that wandered more than it stood straight. A single corral. A low house crouched against the wind like it didn't trust the land any more than he did. People didn't come here by accident. That was the point. The horse snorted softly as Ethan stepped back, wiping his hands on his trousers. He was turning toward the shed when the sound reached him. Footsteps. Not boots on wood. Not hooves. Bare feet on dry ground. Ethan froze. His hand moved without thought, resting against the handle of the knife at his belt. The desert had taught him that hesitation was more dangerous than fear. He turned slowly, eyes lifting toward the fence line. She stood just beyond it. An Apache woman. She was young, though hardship had blurred the line between youth and age. Dust streaked her face. Her hair hung loose down her back, tangled by wind and travel. She wore no weapons, no blanket, only a faded dress torn at the hem, the cloth darkened with sweat and dirt. Her hands were empty and raised. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan felt the old instinct rise in him, sharp and immediate. Leave Dart. Send her away. Trouble always arrived on 2 legs, never 4. He had learned that lesson the hard way. You shouldn't be here, he said at last. His voice sounded rough in his own ears, as if it had forgotten how to be used. I know, she said. Her English was careful, shaped slowly, as though each word carried weight. I did not come for land. That makes 2 of us, Ethan replied. She took a step forward. Not crossing the fence, just close enough that he could see the tremor in her hands. I came because I was told, she said, that you do not ask questions. Ethan's jaw tightened. Who told you that? A man who owed me nothing, she answered. And gave me that. She reached into the fold of her dress and produced a small object, a rusted iron nail, bent near the head. Ethan's breath caught before he could stop it. He knew that nail. 3 years ago, he had driven it into the doorframe of his house, hammering until the wood split, just to feel something give beneath his hands. He had left it there when he abandoned the place. A marker. A warning. A reminder to himself that whatever lived behind that door was dead. How did you get that? He asked. I was hiding, she said. Near the old house. I heard a man crying inside. I did not understand the words. Only the pain. Ethan looked past her, toward the distant hills. Toward a past he had buried carefully and never expected to see unearthed by a stranger. You shouldn't have taken it, he said. I know, she replied. But I was afraid. Of me. No, she said quietly. Of what was coming. The wind shifted. Dust rolled low across the ground. Behind her, far off on the horizon, something moved. a faint line where the earth darkened unnaturally. Ethan followed her gaze. He saw it then. Riders stood still distant, still small. But there was no mistaking the shape. Too many. Too deliberate. The woman's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please," she said. "Don't send me away. They are gathering behind me." Ethan did not answer her right away. He watched the horizon instead. The thin line of riders still distant enough to be uncertain, close enough to be real. They moved slowly, deliberately, not chasing, not fleeing. Wait and die. That was worse. "You should keep moving," he said. "South. There's dry washes they won't track easy." The woman shook her head once. Not defiant. Certain. "They will follow," she said. "They always do." Ethan turned his eyes back to her. Up close, he could see how dry her lips were, how her shoulders sagged beneath a strength that had already been spent. Whatever fear lived in her now was not the kind that panicked. It was the kind that had learned how little panic changed. "What did you do?" he asked. Her fingers tightened around the nail. "I refused." He almost laughed. The sound died before it reached his throat. "That's usually enough." She studied his face, as if measuring something unseen. "You refused once too," she said. "At the old house." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "That was a long time ago. Pain does not forget time," she replied. The wind lifted, tugging at her hair, carrying dust between them. Ethan felt the weight of the choice settling in his chest. It was the same weight he remembered from years ago, the moment before he had turned away, telling himself survival was the same as living. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anika," he nodded once. Names mattered. Asking for one was already a step too far. "You can rest," he said. Just for a moment. Relief flickered across her face, quick and fragile. She did not smile. She stepped forward, passing through the open gate without hesitation, as if she had already crossed a greater line long before this one. Ethan led her to the shade of the shed, where the roof cast a narrow band of darkness against the ground. He took a canteen from a peg and unscrewed the cap. "Slow," he said, handing it to her. "You drink too fast, it comes back up." She obeyed, taking careful sips, her eyes closing as the water touched her mouth. Ethan watched the horizon the entire time. The riders were closer now. Still no sound. Still no urgency. Anika lowered the canteen. "Thank you for the water," he said. "Not for staying," she nodded. "I understand." He knelt and took a small bundle from beneath the workbench. "Dried meat, wrapped in cloth?" He hesitated only a second before offering it. Her eyes widened slightly. "You don't have to, I know. That was the mercy. Not shelter. Not protection. Just food. Just water. Just enough to quiet the voice that said do nothing." As she ate, Ethan asked, "Why are they coming?" Anika's gaze drifted toward the riders again. "Because I was promised to another clan," she said. "To settle a debt I did not create, and you ran. Yes, you know what that means." She swallowed. "It means they will not forgive me." Ethan leaned back against the post, the wood rough against his shoulder. "If I send you away now, they'll take you. Yes, and if I don't, they will think you stand between them, and what they believe is rightfully theirs." That word again. Rightfully. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had heard it before, spoken by men who never doubted themselves. "You could hide," he said, though the suggestion tasted false even as he made it. She shook her head. Hiding is still running. A gust of wind swept across the yard, and with it came the faint sound of hooves. Not loud. Not threatening. Just present. Anika rose to her feet. She was steady now, but there was resolve in the way she stood. Shoulders squared. Chin lifted. "I will go," she said. "You gave me water. That is already more than most men." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift inside him. Not courage, not fear, but responsibility. The dangerous kind. The kind that could not be undone once accepted. He shook his head once. "Not yet." She turned back to him. "You stay," he said. "Hera." In the open, Anika's brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because if I send you away," he said, "it won't be mercy. It'll just be fear wearing a better name." The riders crested the far rise, their figures now distinct against the sky. Anika's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then they will see me." "Yes," Ethan said. "They will." She studied him for a long moment, then bowed her head slightly, not in submission, but acknowledgement. "Then whatever happens next," she said, "will be because you chose it." Ethan watched the riders approach and felt the line close behind him. So did he. The riders did not hurry. That was the first thing Ethan noticed once they were close enough to see clearly. 6 of them, spread in a shallow arc, horses walking instead of trotting. No dust cloud raised in anger. No shouted challenge. They rode the way men rode when they believed the outcome was already decided. Anika stood beside the fence, hands folded in front of her, chin lifted. She did not look back at Ethan. Whatever courage she carried it forward. Ethan stepped out beside her. The sound of hooves slowed, then stopped. Leather creaked. One rider dismounted and walked a few steps ahead of the others. He was older than Ethan had expected, his hair streaked with gray, his posture straight despite the years. His eyes moved first to Anika, then to Ethan, and finally to the land itself, the fence, the corral, the house. He nodded once. "You are far from your people," the man said. Anika answered before Ethan could. "I am not lost." The man's gaze hardened. "You were promised. I was traded," she replied. "There is a difference." A murmur passed through the riders behind him. The man looked back at them, then returned his attention to Ethan. "This is not your matter." Ethan felt the weight of those words settle over him. "She drank my water," Ethan said. "Ate my food." The man considered that. "Then you showed kindness. Then I accepted responsibility," Ethan replied. That drew a reaction. "You are not Apache. No. You do not know our laws." "I know what happens when people are treated like payment," Ethan said. "I've seen it." The rider studied him. "You speak as if our ways are cruel. I speak as if choice matters," Ethan said. Silence stretched. Behind the riders, a younger man shifted in his saddle. "Debt," he muttered in Apache. The older man raised a hand. "She was promised to restore balance," he said. "If she does not return, another will be taken." Anika's breath caught. "A girl," the man continued. "Younger." "No," Anika said. The man's voice softened. "This is why you were chosen." Ethan stepped forward. No, the man's expression changed. "Then you choose disorder." "I choose her choice," Ethan replied. "We will return at dawn," the man said. With elders, the riders turned away. Silence returned, heavier than before. "You should not have done that," Anika said. That's what they told me last time too, Ethan replied. The sun slid lower. You didn't tell me everything, Ethan said. You did not ask everything, Anika replied. They said another girl would be taken. Yes, you let that happen. I lived with it. You're breaking something, Ethan said. Yes, you planned this. Yes, you're using me. Yes, I want you to stay, Anika said. Only to witness my refusal, she added. If they come at dawn, Ethan said, they'll expect me to step aside. Yes, and if I don't, then they will decide whether their law is stronger than their shame. Night gathered. Night came without ceremony. The desert cooled fast, the heat draining out of the ground as if the land itself were exhaling. Ethan built no fire. Smoke would invite questions, and questions had a way of becoming demands. They sat apart at first, not out of distance, but gravity. They will come with elders, Anika said. I don't trust men who don't need to raise their voices, Ethan replied. They will wait, she said. For me to break, you won't. I am strong, she said. But strength is not endless. What do you want from me? Ethan asked. I want you to stay, she said. Only to witness. Then I'll stand with you, Ethan said. That is enough, she replied. The light had shifted by the time the sound reached them. Not thunder. Not wind. Hooves, doggy. The rancher stood still beside the corral fence, one hand resting on the sun-warmed rail, the other hanging useless at his side. He did not turn yet. He already knew what the sound meant. The woman knew it too. She felt it in the way his body went rigid, as if the ground itself had tightened around his boots. She moved closer without asking. Her fingers found the seam of his coat, clutching it not in panic, but in decision. Her breath was shallow, controlled, and when she spoke, her voice was so low it barely carried past his shoulder. Do not send me away. The words were not a plea. They were a line drawn. He looked down at her then. Dust clung to her hair. Her eyes were fixed not on him, but on the empty stretch of desert beyond the fence, where the sound was growing clearer with each heartbeat. The riders were coming. He could still choose. There was still time to step aside. Still time to say nothing, to let her walk forward alone, to let the moment pass out of his hands and into theirs. But the sound of hooves was no longer distant. It had weight now. Direction. Purpose. He stepped in front of her. The riders emerged through the dust in a single widening line. They did not charge. They did not shout. They rode slowly, evenly, as if the desert itself had agreed to move with them. Dozens of horses advanced at dawn, their silhouettes cut sharp against the rising light. Spears and rifles caught the sun. Feathers stirred in the haze. At their center rode a figure taller than the rest, unmoving in the saddle, watching. The rancher stood with his back to the fence, shoulders squared. He did not raise a weapon. He did not step forward. He simply stood. The woman dropped to her knees beside him. Not because she was forced. Not because she was weak. Because she chose where to stand. Her hands tightened around the fabric of his coat as she knelt, her body half hidden behind his leg. Her face was turned outward now, toward the riders, her expression bare and unflinching. Don't send me away, she whispered again. The riders slowed to a halt within 100 yards. Dust drifted between them like a held breath. The rancher felt every eye on him, not curious, not angry, but measuring. They were not looking at the woman. They were looking at him. At the line his body drew between her kneeling form and the mounted wall behind her. He did not speak. The chief raised one hand. The riders stopped. Silence fell hard enough to hear the horses breathing. The woman lifted her chin, still kneeling, still gripping the rancher's coat. Her voice carried now, not loud, but steady. "I chose him." The words cut clean through the dust. A murmur rippled through the line of riders. The chief did not look at her. His gaze never left the man standing in front of her. The rancher felt the weight of the moment settle fully at last. This was not about mercy anymore. It was about claim, about whether compassion could be made to stand under a sky full of witnesses. He stepped 1 foot forward. It was not a challenge. It was an answer. The woman's grip tightened. The chief studied the distance between them, the kneeling woman, the unmoving man, the empty ground separating flesh from steel. At last, the chief lowered his hand. The riders did not advance. They did not retreat either. They waited. The sun rose fully over the desert, burning the last of the mist away. The riders remained at the edge of the ranch for a long time after that, watching, measuring, remembering. When they finally turned their horses, they did so without sound, without signal, leaving the dust to settle behind them. The woman did not rise until they were gone. When she stood, she did not thank the rancher. She did not touch him again. She simply stood beside him, on the same side of the fence, facing the open land together. Whatever came next would not be decided by dawn. But this moment, this line drawn in dust and breath, could not be taken back.